It does help.
Yes.
Dan, are you going to start with just reading about quorum? Is that what you're going to start?
Yep, I have that one here.
Yeah.
Okay, what just happened?
Oh yeah, no phones on the table. Ready? All right, welcome back, everyone. We are at the second phase, if you will, of our meeting that we started February 27th. Now we're at February 28th after a recess that we called the February 27th one. So just to get everyone here and as well as those watching remotely up to speed, last night we did call the meeting into recess because, as our understanding was last night, we lost quorum. We lost a board member from the discussion. And so upon further review, and I'm not the lawyer here, so we did ask a lawyer to help us out as we go through all of our bylaws and policies as well as the statutes in the state of Minnesota. So their understanding upon further review is they believe the interpretation that we came to kind of in a rush last night was incorrect. The listed here is inaccurate. Instead, it is our opinion, and I'm reading the advice here, that a quorum is based upon all members of the board elected or appointed. And the opinion was reached based on various reasons. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically in Minnesota State Statute Chapter 317A and the MSA bylaws, we don't have a differentiation, if you will, between appointed and elected members. Although it is clearly stated elected members in that phrase, which is what we read that one sentence last night. But now that we've had not a full day, but the better part of a day to kind of go back through and look at that, it is the understanding and advice from our lawyer that the quorum is made up of those members currently holding office. There's no distinction between whether the board members currently holding office are elected or appointed. So I guess if any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can share what I can share from our lawyer. But I say that because we want to make sure that we're doing everything right. And that's why we took a recess last night, was because our understanding last night was we had to. Our understanding today is different understanding and interpretation. So with that said, we do have, we made it, I just clarified, we made it through Section 8, student representatives last night. And then we did have a new motion come to the table. That motion was seconded. As the board chair, I am going to, and what I should have done last night and did not do was any new business should have come at the end. What would have happened then is we would have continued through our agenda as we had described. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the motion that we brought up at the end of last night's meeting and put that one to the end. So we have a motion on the table that needs to be addressed at our meeting, but I'm putting it in the right order. So it's a new business item that comes later. So, and then I would like to, if we can, carry through. We have some things that need to get done this month, actually by tomorrow even. So I'm glad that you guys were able to flex your schedule such that you could come in again the next day. So all that being said, thanks for your patience and participation along with us. And let's carry on with item 10, which 9, Executive Director's Report.
All right, well, hello everyone. So a couple things in the Director's Report. First, I just want to share out some of our first semester academic awards. So basically our honor roll. So As you saw in the director's report, of our 604 students, 514 made the honor roll. We had 186 students that were in the distinguished honor roll, which is a 4.0. We had 248 students that were high honor roll, which is a 3.45 to 3.999. And then just making the honor roll, we had 80 students, which is 2.95 to 3.449. So congratulations to all those students. So we did send out a certificate and a letter to each of those students that were on the honor roll, congratulating them of their what they've done. So we want to make sure that we recognize those students. So just wanted to bring that up to speed. As we mentioned last month, just to bring everybody up to speed, what is the plan of merger? And I kind of wanted to share that with the board. What does that look like and what does it entail? So for a merger plan, there is some steps that need to be followed, and this is kind of those steps. So first off, the effective date of a merger is July 1. Okay, so there's two things that need to be done. One is that there needs to be a plan of merger, and then the preparation filing of articles of merger. So the plan merger includes a couple different things. So the plan merger is done as with the admin of both schools. We name the schools that are going to merge. We name the school that will be the surviving school, and then the school that will be the merging school. That's in the plan of merger. Also, any terms and conditions of the proposed merger are also included in that plan merger. The manner and basis of converting the memberships of the constituent schools into the memberships of the surviving school. A statement of amendments of the articles of the surviving school proposed as part of the merger, and other provisions with respect to the proposed merger. That's all in the plan merger. That plan of merger goes to both boards for approval. When both boards approve the merger, then the authorizer of the surviving school is designated as the authorizer of record. So the authorizer of the surviving school is the one that we would continue with. So that authorizer and the administration redo the charter contract. So the charter contract changes, which it would include what grades you're serving, multiple sites, the academics, everything that was in the previous contract we had with SAM, or whatever the surviving school is. That's all redone. So then the authorizer submits the plan of merger, the plan of merger, and then any statement that shows that both boards approved the plan merger. So we have our minutes, and then that gets filed with MDE. So there's something that goes to the Secretary of State, which just says we're filing, and then that all gets submitted with our authorizer to MDE by July 1. That's kind of what is needed for that part. There is no approval from MDE. It's basically, it's when it's submitted, it's approved at that time. And then the merger is complete. So it's kind of simple in that piece, but what we've done, and we'll share more with that during the merger update piece of the packet, where the admin had met, and we did a lot more details because we felt that our boards needed more information than just that plan merger to make a educated decision as far as is a merger in best interest of MSA. And WLA can do the same thing, is it the best interest of WLA? So we'll talk about that later on, but there's a lot of information that we've gathered together in that brief, that 34 pages. That's a lot of work we've put together to give you guys more information on some of those specifics. Okay? Any questions on the report itself? Okay. Good, thank you.
Yep, of course. So next up, item 10 is the chair's report, and I had a few things. I don't typically write documents, but I do like to share. So one of the things that I've got a fair bit of feedback on was our policy 102.1. So, folks are reaching out to us and basically just sharing that the concern over how we're doing it, maybe not even necessarily what we're doing. So I just wanted to share with the community that it's an extremely important, policy for us to support and get behind. I would agree that we can and should have done maybe some things differently. And in particular, I think, right, when we have new policies, we're required to have the public has a chance to voice opinions twice on it publicly. We have a procedure on how we go through new policies. They're read usually first read, then come back second read with discussion. So that one seems like it went through a little bit fast, which is, I think, why the public is reacting the way they are. I don't feel it's necessarily about the content so much, but I just want to share that we're hearing and we're listening, so please bear with us as we go through different policy updates, because we want to take kind of this excitement, if you will, or this need to protect our students, which is where this came rooted from, but we need to also do it right, because we as a board are responsible for policy. So just please bear with us and keep us accountable, right? If you see things that you say, hey, we're doing things wrong, that email me or email whoever needs to hear that feedback so that we can take that in and do better next time. So apologies for any missteps. The other thing that I need to take ownership for, and I was called out on, was failing to manage our meeting last time. So last time, for those of you who've heard, it's almost becoming infamous, we had a January board meeting, and now people are saying, I have to go watch this January board meeting. So if you haven't watched, I wouldn't recommend it, but it was not one of our better meetings. But there was a motion, and I think that's fine and fair, but we can't be talking over each other. We can't be saying that your opinion is not valid, right? So we had a norm session at our workshop yesterday. Boy, it seems like a long time ago. That was last night, yeah. We had a norms discussion where we said, how do we want to behave as a board? We did talk about, and if you didn't watch it, so I have a gavel now, and this is not my style, but I do have a gavel, so if someone in the audience starts saying something out of turn, I will wrap this, or the same for the board. I will also wrap it and just say, we need to calm down, let's bring it back. That's my responsibility as board chair. I'm not comfortable with calming down emotions. I actually don't know how to react all the time, because I kind of want to feel like, what is it? Let's listen, but it's also my responsibility to keep decorum. So again, please bear with me. So I failed at the last meeting. I don't usually watch meetings again. I went back to watch it again to see if there's any chance where I can improve. So again, feel free to provide feedback there as we try to provide the best service we can here for this school. So that's all I wanted to share this month. But again, just help us as you can. So next one up is board committees. Normally we go through these and we just ask for questions. So if I could go on to item 11, board committees for governance. Any questions for governance committees? Merger, any questions for Maggie? School expansion, any questions? Last one, we do need to pause as the approval of financials. Mr. Slennon, this is your first time up, right?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Slennon. Okay. First and foremost, we were approached by Old National about approving our line of credit. And there were some questions by board members on what exactly this is. Our line of credit is basically the credit card for the school. This credit card is used to circumvent some spending that might happen when we're waiting for money from the state to come back. That's basically the gist of it. What I've been told is that in the history of MSA, we have never actually used that line of credit. So what they're asking for is for the board, every board member to verify that it is okay to move forward with having this line of credit, and that my name and Randy's name is on that. So if you could, it is time sensitive, so please make sure to sign those documents tonight if you can, because they will lapse as of Wednesday, tomorrow. So please make sure to take care of that tonight.
So the 500,000 was what I was asking, because somebody can go crazy, right? So it helps for the school as needed if we're not getting paid by the state or whatever to pay payroll or pay. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And actually, that was
the number makes more sense. Otherwise, it seemed quite high.
Yeah. Actually, it was actually 250,000 as of 2 years ago, but with our bonding, we were told we have to raise it to 5.
Cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Let me pull this up. So as of January, we have a strong cash balance. We will be receiving 95,000 back from our building company shortly. We are at 58% through the year. Our ADM as of January is 544. Our current fund balance is 58.2%, so we're slightly ahead, but right on track. Our current revenue balance is 58.3, so here again, we're slightly ahead, but right on track. Tech is always above. If you're somebody who's reviewing the budgets, tech is always going to be ahead because they're first of the year purchases. There was some question about what is the legacy fund, and that question was answered. It wasn't as much as we all had hoped, but for our school, it's about 20 cents per student. Larger districts see a substantially larger number.
Larger per student or just larger?
Per student, yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think larger total because per student.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. There was some questions about interest rates and what they will be. Unfortunately, we as an administration, the board can't answer that question. They have to come from our accountants. Talked about enrollment. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about. I know Randy is in the process of budget projections that will include the shot clock that is required by Minnesota State High School League.
I had a question, but it's just out of personal interest. Are we able to do this dragon dinner?
So that's going to be the point that I added for discussion, revising the AFC committee.
Ah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, as a subcommittee.
Okay.
So that will
We'll
come
take
at
it then.
that
We'll take
point.
it then.
Other than that, everything is pretty straightforward. Meetings are still tentative, but we will update them month to month as this was brought to me now. My schedule is pretty planned out for the next couple of months, so our next meeting will be March 13th. Any other questions? Any questions regarding, sorry, my computer's a little slow tonight. Financial reports.
I have one question. So, on the February Finance Committee agenda, number 3, it says 224 sixth graders, room of 80, and then it says 160 sixth grade wait list. But I didn't see anything about 8th grade. I don't know.
Randy, do you want to take that question?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, I just didn't see anything about 8th grade, but 6th graders were listed twice under number 3, B and C.
Is that on the previous?
It's on the February Finance Committee agenda.
Okay, I
and
jumped to the
number
next one,
3,
okay.
enrollment.
So my understanding is because of our enrollment numbers, we're only onboarding 6th graders this
Yeah.
year.
Right, so so we enrolled 80, there's 160 left on the wait list.
But I think her question is why didn't we represent 8th grade on there, or did
I
we
didn't
receive
see
any?
8th grade.
There's actually, I have all the information here from Joelle. There's a wait list in every grade but 12th grade.
Okay.
And I don't have the numbers, but I could let you know. If you need them. Yes, we have wait lists in every grade but 12.
Okay, there just might be a typo, because even 160 plus 80 is not 224.
Yeah, right.
So it's probably another grade. Any other questions? Finance?
Do I need to amend those for next?
It would be nice to get whatever that one is corrected, if it's 7th or 8th grade.
Sorry, my brain is still trying to code switch.
Well, and because we're not approving the minutes, you can just make the correction and then it'll be posted.
Yeah, the correct enrollment numbers.
I'm just wondering if it's supposed to be 167th graders and 78th graders, but it's this year's 6th and 7th graders? You know what I mean? Like, so it's sixth grade wait list, but really for next year, that would be seventh grade. And then the seventh grade wait list would be eight. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
No, I think it was of the 512,
Oh, okay.
224 were sixth graders. We enrolled 80 of them. Of the 512, 160 were sixth graders, 70 were seventh graders.
Okay,
My brain is now kicking in.
got it. So just no enrollment numbers for the other grades included in this one. Okay.
And they had just come straight from that, so.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah. Okay, I will get that. We will clarify that. So, back to finance report. Any questions on the finance report?
I did have a question, but I gave it to Shani. The NHS budget had a huge deficit, which was concerning because we shouldn't have one. And so she said something is numbered wrong, so she is looking at that. So I just wanted you to know that I did talk to Shani about that already.
I mean, it looks like it's tracking well. I really like the visual graphics we started recently, and it's much easier to kind of follow, right? So, you want to make a motion to approve?
Yep, I make a motion to approve the January
January.
finances, sorry.
Second, anyone?
A second.
DJ seconds, and DJ is doing double duty tonight with notes, so thanks. Please be patient with me. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So we have tonight 6, so it passes 6 to 3. All right, we're on to the consent agenda. I will make a motion, and just to refresh everyone's memory, I believe we had policy 102.2 pulled off in my notes, so the consent agenda is unchanged except for 102.2 for discussion. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Further discussion, concerns?
Just clarification, for 203.2, do we need to include student report in it's the agenda items? 203.2, it's the outline of how meetings, the agenda should be run, and it's missing student report. Does that need to be?
In the first read, you're saying?
Yeah.
But it's follow an agenda order similar to.
Similar, okay.
And we, yeah, great
Point of
question.
clarification.
No, it's a great question, and we had the discussion in the governance committee, and what we were trying to do is, because we can, I'll just share what we had real quick. We can change this to be kind of exactly how we have it, but we're trying to leave it similar to the MSBA, right, which is the recommended policies. So we're trying to move the organization, our school, to follow those as best we can. So because it does say similar, we felt like we still had the ability to add and change things. But in the future, if somebody wants to know, how to run a meeting, they can look at this, and maybe there's a better way. So I have actually considered, should I make our agenda more similar to this, just new order business? That seems like that's good, old unfinished business. So you may see that change come, just as I'm trying to always improve how we run through stuff. But so for now, we felt like we can operate with this under the word similar.
And I also know that yesterday during our workshop, we kind of had a discussion on the language for 209E9, whether chain of command is the correct term, or chain of responsibility, chain of communication. I personally would like to see chain of responsibility because there is a set of responsibility that we should be following.
Maybe Heather, can you make a note of that for us, please?
I did make a note
Okay.
of that, and I thought we'll talk about it at governance,
Yeah,
see if we
yeah.
want to make an amendment to that word. What are we saying a preferred word is?
We have used communication, you're saying responsibility?
Because there are certain items when it comes to soliciting like complaints or topics of discussion, and is it the board's responsibility or is it the executive director's responsibility?
Yeah, so that's, I
And
think
this
it's
is
a good-
under- sorry.
I think it's a first read, so tonight we're okay with it, but we come back with some recommendations. Yeah. All right. Then I'm going to put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain, so consent passes 6-0. Thanks for doing all that heavy reading. There is a lot that is boilerplate. I'll just put a little editorial comment in there. So it's tried and tested by lawyers, by the state of Minnesota, what have you. So I feel these are safer to put in the consent agenda as opposed to listing new ones, what have you. So DEI, if I can move us to section 13, the diversity, equity, inclusion update. So sadly, we had to reschedule again our workshop, and that would have been last Wednesday night. We would have had our training. So we did offer, did you hear anything else?
Not yet.
Okay.
Have you?
So we offered up a couple of days to our trainer, but we haven't heard back yet. So that was when, that was the
14th and the 16th.
of
Yeah.
March.
Correct.
So we don't know if that's available yet, but
Or the 13th, we thought, because it's no school, but we could meet earlier.
Could meet on that Monday?
Right. So
So-
we offered all 3 days. I haven't heard.
we don't have to necessarily decide tonight, but take a look at those nights and let me and Randy know if anything doesn't work. And we'll check again with the trainer to see if we can have a special session on DEI training. So bear with us. I think we're all excited for this training. We just need to make it happen. And I believe they are too. So. Okay. We have, coming up later in the agenda, we have the 102.1, but I just thought this is a good spot to talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion section. So in policy 102.1, as it's written right now, we have like a land acknowledgement statement. So this, I put it in the notes, is basically like a Native American kind of statement about the land. And so as it's written right now, the board should include it in the meeting. And so I guess I just thought, let's talk about that. How do we want to, assuming it passes, how do we want to incorporate that? Do we want to have somebody read it? Do we want to have it in the notes, on the agenda? What do you guys think? Any suggestions or ideas?
Can you restate what you're asking again?
I'm just, so I think the policy said that the board is supposed to have this statement.
Okay.
And so I'm asking the board, how do we want to do that?
So that we publicly acknowledge it every time we meet, is that?
That's how I read 102.1, is that it would be in there every month or every meeting. So what's a good way to do that? Do we, like right now we have the students read out from mission and vision.
I think it should be read right when you call the order during the mission and vision.
Yeah, and we can read it, so we can have different people read it, or however we want to do it. But, I mean, we have two students, maybe one student could read one, and another student could read mission vision, the alternate, or something like that.
That works, yeah.
Yeah. You guys okay with that? Okay. All right, and I believe this is the latest version, so hopefully,
Yeah.
this is one I'll copy and put in the future meetings, okay? And then I just had next steps because, as I mentioned before, we are not done with DEI, but we did go through a lot of the previous action items and at least address the previous action items. So it's up to us to decide what and how we want to work on next. So I guess thoughts, questions, ideas. But I mean, the DEI section seemed a little bit more tangible to me when we had like a list. I don't want to do a task list, but it was more, okay, hold on, DEI otherwise is such a nebulous concept. I can't just say we're doing DEI now because we have it on the agenda. So is there, it doesn't have to be tonight, but I mean, think about it. We owe it to our school to figure out how can we continue to advance so that our school is a welcoming place, right, for everyone, right? So how do we do that? Anyone have any thoughts for tonight?
And something that's fresh in my mind is I feel that to help ensure that board members, past, present, future, are all on the same, coming to the same table, the same mindset. I think we really need to establish how we onboard people and what that process looks like, and ensuring that everybody who's onboarded goes through the correct process, has the correct training prior to being seated, and ensuring that we're all here for the same matter. And that's coming from what I heard last night from the student petition. We need to ensure that our board members are coming to the table with the best of intentions and understand our roles.
Point of clarification, Wendell. Are you suggesting that before an election that members that are interested in being a board member should take the training? Or they should be elected and then they would be signed up for charter school board training?
For discussion, I mean, it might be in the best interest that the election happens, they go through the training, and then they're seated. I mean, if we think about.
There's the consideration,
Yeah.
though, that that's not offered
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, so we
there
would
is-
have to discuss what that plan looks like. When the board training that I went through, and like I've said, I recommend that we do specific charter school training. Most traditional school board members go through this process before they're even sat in January. So they're ensuring that who comes to the table has received the proper training and the knowledge to move forward.
And it's because most boards seat in January, is
Yeah.
that correct?
Elections in November,
Yeah.
they do the training
Yeah.
through, and then they seat in January.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we can adopt a maybe similar process.
And we used to seat in January.
Yeah, I understand.
And then they moved it to summer because then you finished a whole school year. I don't,
So we could do some research.
Yeah, should we see, it actually came up in governance too. And it was mentioned here, Jen mentioned it here too. Should we seat in January? Because that's when the financials end. It seemed like a natural,
Our
Financials end
are in
June
the summer.
January, okay.
And that, I think that's why it is as it is, but I love the idea of, I mean, when I was on board, and I had no idea, it was not even useful for many months, you could argue how many months.
Yeah.
But I agree, I think we're all kind of swimming and trying to do our best, but we don't know, so it takes
I-
time.
I personally think, and this up to the board, is I kind of like that they're seated in the summer, because the summer is kind of a slower time of the year for board members, so you can kind of get the training, get up to speed. Because January to be seated, so much happens in the spring. You know, you got budgets coming up, you got enrollment. I mean, there's so much going on to try to bring in new board members and get them up to speed, and losing people that were part of that. I think that's a really tough transitional time.
I like
Personally.
the idea of onboarding though, because I think we
Yes.
didn't, we just said, congratulations, here's your binder, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
So
And,
when you're done.
go ahead.
Okay, the thought that I had was we could host the election so that everything is done in January. The off-boarding member would continue through the summer, so that way the onboarding member has the summer to do their training and then seated at that September meeting as a possibility. We'd have to look into Max and see when they offer their trainings, and we can, like we said, talk through governance to see what that best process is. But when the election happens, okay, they're elected, they won the election, they have to go through their training process, but in that meantime, they could be actively at meetings, observing, and non-set. Does that make sense?
So can we maybe just think about it in the governance as we're, you know, like what opportunities do we have with election timing as well as the onboarding? I'm trying to think, is that a board thing or is it a DEI thing or both?
I think it ties into it.
I can see connection, but I see it more of as like a board, the whole board needs that, what you're mentioning. And I don't mind putting it under DEI, I just want to make sure we're not just squeezing something in there because we need something.
Yeah. But what I meant by it being a DEI issue is that the students brought forth their concerns that they've seen, and it has to do with board roles and members in their
Yep,
seats. So
yep, okay.
that's
Okay.
why I brought it up here.
Yep, and I think then it can fit, so, good. Any further discussion, different ideas? If you have anything, you know, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I don't know if Heddle may have different thoughts here, but I think it's a long time after an election to go a couple of months of just observing. So I think as we think about what that timing looks like, and yeah, I think having that board training specific to charter school boards is very beneficial, at least to give you a good overview. I found that very helpful. But I think waiting and coming to the meeting and just sitting, I think it is also a tall order to ask of new board members. So I think as we look at how that could work, that we keep that in mind too. That we're not asking people to express interest, run for a position, be elected, and then sit for a number of months. That doesn't seem like an adequate way to go. So that would just be my thought on that.
But of course, they're always welcome, right?
For
They
sure.
always come and watch. I remember a couple, go ahead.
So we're still saying election doesn't change between what Mr. Vetch and Mr. Sutton are saying, but the decision will be July 1st or January 1st seating? Are those the two that everybody's leaning towards?
I think we should do some research on when board training's offered
training
and
happens and then-
plan it around that.
Okay.
What I would
Makes a lot
love
of
to
sense,
see is a very intentional onboarding process, different than what I did, where the folks, now, I will, not in defense, but we appointed. So it wasn't like we had all these people coming down the pike that we could have managed, but that's just my excuse. So I would say, if we had the normal election, and we know who these people are, why can't I have a meeting with them and sit them down and say, here's what, just give me something to go together with them and help them ease on, right? So I think we can do better there. The appointment ones is gonna be hard no matter what. We need to fill.
But there is the board binder
Yeah.
that we can beef up.
Sure, yeah,
No.
yeah.
Put information in
And
there.
I guess I relegated probably too much to the board binder and just be like, that's what I did wrong. Here's the binder.
Right.
Maybe we set
training
up
or
some sort of
something.
mentorship, so we pair up them and they can walk through the steps of the board.
Yeah, yeah. I thought the same for the opposite positions too. I think we did articulate something in there. It would be nice if we could have, like, let's say, a vice chair go to chair and then out. I mean, that's an ideal world, just to get some practice, right? But, okay. Anything else?
I have one more question, and I know it's a hard question. How involved do we want our student body in our DEI initiatives? At what point do we bring them in? Maybe somebody has a better way of phrasing it. Are we taking initiatives from the kids, I guess is, because I think that that's probably something that we need to clear up. Because if we make a commitment to advance their initiatives, then it's hard from a governance level, if we've made that commitment to not back down from it, but not advance the initiative.
I'm collecting my thoughts. Yeah. And student voice is very important. I mean, truly, they are our number one stakeholders, and truly, we need to be aware of their concerns, their excitements, anything that makes them want to be here at MSA.
The way I see it, this institution, this school, the school district, all of this exists like serve the students. So when you have the primary stakeholders, like the students, involved in developing a system that works for them through these DEI initiatives, then that's how you really make them work. Because if you have everybody involved except the students in developing these initiatives, then it's not gonna work.
Was that not the point to bring on a second student member, to have more student input?
I guess are we as a board ready for that though?
Ready for,
I'm sorry now, meaning would we as a board function better for the students if we as a board were collaborating on the policies or initiatives and then getting student input? Or do we want to be student-led?
Cool, okay. So, it kind of ties into like the policy agenda I proposed at the beginning of the year.
Yes,
So if you
yes.
recall, there was this ladder of participation, and so, here, what is it? So, at the bottom, you like towards the middle, you have adult-initiated ideas and initiatives that are shared, and the decisions are shared with children. And as you move up the ladder, and at the highest part of the ladder is where student voice really thrives, and the system is really serving students. Up there is where the ideas, the initiatives are proposed or initiated by the children, the students, and the decisions are shared with the adults or directed by them. I think that's where we should be moving towards, and that'll benefit us in the end game too.
I think, Hedda, we need to, I think you used the word hear, right? So we need to not only listen but hear, so internalize the feedback. But then it's our job as a board to bring, let's say, policies to life, right? So I don't think it's fair to ask our students to, let's say, draft and publish and get a policy out. I don't think that's fair. I think what I expect our students is to say, I'm not feeling well here, or I love what we're doing here, can we do more of that? And that's not to belittle the feedback, it's just like, great, let's do more of this, because that's what the students are, and let's do less of that or get rid of that in our school, because it's not consistent with our mission and vision, right, or our value set. So I think if we can help in any way, and I know we're trying with this governance, I think it's the first time that I've seen it since I've been here for a while, where we're really trying to say, let's take something and then mold it into a policy that we can share with the school and say we're moving the school, right? But I don't think it's also not fair for us to just say something came, rubber stamping it out, right? Then we're abdicating our responsibility as the board, which is to manage the policies. So we have to marry the two, I think, somehow, which is that intent, and then make it fit with our existing policies and make an improvement for the school.
And I feel having Noah on our governance committee is great as well. So we do have representation of our students in one of our committees, and maybe we need to start doing that in some of our other committees to allow a student voice in our other committees besides just governance.
I love it. I would just ask, Noah, I mean, we're asking a lot of you, right? You're coming to board meetings, you're sitting at governance meetings. I mean, I don't know.
Could be someone
Students
else
are
too.
here for school, but then we're saying, oh, but on your free time, please come and help us out. So we'll take any and all feedback, but we also have to be sensitive to them as students as well, right? Your time, so.
Well, and the ladder you mentioned, is it something that today we're on this run for this issue, but this run, you know what I mean? Because I do
Yes.
think there are times where, yep, we need to hear what you have to say, and other times where the board has to say this. So I don't know if it's just moving up, but moving around the ladder. You know, because
Yeah.
right now I need to get up high, but, you know, sometimes I have to stay down low, sometimes I need to get the middle of the wall.
Totally understand, yeah.
So I like the idea under DEI, if we can, poke a little bit at that student role, maybe, just like how do we want to embrace that more, how do we want to engage that more? I don't know that we have the answers tonight, but I think it's a good question that we can kind of have some discussions about. We'll bring some more students in, maybe during a town hall or what have you, and say, how do you want to help, right?
Again, I think that's a great point, is bringing it to student hall. If we know that it's contentious or maybe need more input on it from students, I think maybe call a town hall on it. Or maybe invite them to the governance committee because that specific item will be talked about.
Anything else? So I captured a few notes, so I'll start a little, kind of helps me track progress towards initiatives. Okay, next up, we had a scheduled break. Are you guys okay if we move that? Or do you need a break now?
I'm good.
Anyone need a break now? All right, then I'm gonna, let me know when you need a break further on and we'll move that break. Okay. So we'll skip item 14. So discussion and decision section. First up, we have code of ethics.
Other than we just reviewed norms and how our meetings would be run, and encourage every board member to continuously review the code of ethics so that we can continue to be or make progress towards being a highly effective board.
That was a good discussion, but I thought, right? We went through a number of level set, a bunch of initiatives. Good, I think that was time well spent. Next up, we have board member changes. So there's a few things all kind of in this category, if you will. So we have the formalization approval of teacher board term appointment for Mr. Sledgen. Ms. Patel can go through that one. And we do have to form an election committee, for our current bylaws. And so we can take those ones next. But maybe, Patel, if you take us through the attached document, pre-meeting notice.
Sure. How in-depth do we want to go? Should I ask for questions
yeah,
first?
let's do questions. Or maybe, you want me to take it back, or do you want to go back to?
Oh, it doesn't matter. If somebody has questions, it might be easier. And then what I still haven't resolved is, does the fact that elected members are now just all general members change anything in here? So I'm just thinking out loud
Okay.
as we go through this. Which I don't think it does. So are there questions?
Maybe I'll just
Yeah.
quick, so we've gone back and forth on this one, and we did because we had a previous example where we made, what did we call it, like a interim? I think we called it interim, right? And so we copied the interim. We appointed, I think, 3 board members last summer, all for the different terms that were still outstanding. And that was that. And then the next month, we came back with some more information where we said, well, hang on, some confusion over whether, and this is for the public as well, some confusion over whether there's a vacant spot or it needs to be re-elected. And so at that time, we said, okay, just to be safe, we'll change it to a one-year interim, and we'll do an election again. And now, again, based on further review and a lot of studying and discussion in the governance meeting, it looks like the recommendation is we're not able to make an interim. We don't have the authority as a board to make an interim position. We either appoint for the term or we elect, and we can't even do a special election. Is that right?
Yeah, because that seat has to run for 3 years. So there can only be one elected person to that seat for the 3-year term that seat exists. So there's 9 seats. So any other person who takes that seat takes by appointment for the predecessor's term. The predecessor is that elected person. So if you, and I think the logic of that is we have 3 categories of seats, and if we have equitable representation in each of those 3 categories, the way the cycle should run is that you have 1 seat in each category coming up every year for election, and so it builds that, it builds continuity in the board, that mentorship potential, which is probably the intent of having the 3-year terms. So it's a procedural thing, not to just throw a seat into an election again out of the 3-year cycle.
So any questions? Did you have a chance to read through? Does it make sense? Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, the motions are at the bottom. The first one would be to rescind the motion presented at the August 15th, 22 meeting to post an interim position until seated in June.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, one abstention, motion passes 5 with Wyndham abstaining. So that rescinds the motion, which basically puts back in the earlier one, which is the 3-year term.
The July one.
Okay,
Yes.
and then another motion.
Move to expunge all discussions, motions, and resolutions that occurred after the July 18, 2022 meeting related to Member Sledden's appointment.
I can second that. And I would just say on discussion, so when I saw this, expunging all discussions, to be honest, just so everyone's clear, that's history, that's what we did. But I like what Heddle's point was we have a history where we had a interim, and that was cited again for this most recent case. So if we don't go back and kind of correct our, let's say, mistakes, we may repeat it again. So I like the idea of not deleting it, but striking it out, so it's there, that happened.
Yeah, you can still read it, so
Yeah.
you would just cross it out, so
the
it's
date.
still legible, and then put the correct reference.
So DJ, that's almost a little for you is, right?
Yeah.
Something else, but, and we can help, I would say, I like that idea of kind of cleaning up what we had in the past. So.
And that is number 2 that's in that
Motion
pre-notice.
to, correct. So, well, I guess in this motion, we would then go back and we can correct the minutes, so a new copy will be uploaded. Any further discussion? Question, maybe?
No.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Aye. So passes 5-1, abstention with no abstaining. All right, we need to form an election committee. We have, we need 1 parent, 2 teachers. We also need a community member or members. And I do say members, we have, within the bylaws, one of the ideas is to, to think about having 3 community members instead of just 2. So we would have 3, 3, and 3. It has not been approved yet, but that's just something to think about. So running an election, makes sense, but we need an election committee. I believe the timing, I should know, but we need to get that going now because I think the election, do you have it, Randy?
No, just one thing is, the community member wouldn't be an election, though, it would be an appointment, correct?
We would need to appoint for the one that resigned.
Right.
And, yeah, that's right.
Right, it's just an appointment, because there's 2 years left.
That's right,
on his
sorry.
term,
At the
right?
governance meeting, we talked through that, and I forgot that we don't have an open community spot yet. So is there anyone who would be able or willing to sit in an election committee? Which I believe, I've never done it, but I believe the process is kind of set out in front of us. We just need someone to oversee it. Anyone? Is that a smile? Yes?
That's a smile I already had.
You already have a what?
Committee.
Okay, you are, yeah, that's true. Anyone else who's sorely lacking in committee?
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Under the job descriptions that are listed in our packet here, and feel free to say no. Let me pull it up here. The job descriptions, it states, sorry, Maggie.
I know.
Under the vice chair.
I will do it.
That they are to help the board chair develop and implement officer transition and succession plans. Does that constitute or fall under that? It would be the question. And I would suggest Teresa helping.
Yeah, no.
The nice thing is, I believe your term is up, right?
Yes.
So that is actually a nice spot to be in to
Yes.
help out.
Yeah, no, I can.
Can I help?
Yeah.
Okay, so
And I can
put
help
me,
if need-
put me as assistant
that's okay.
helper.
Assistant helper.
Yep.
Okay.
Because I'd like to make sure I understand and learn. I haven't sat on that one yet, so. Thank you, Maggie. So I think it's pretty straightforward, but putting out the information the community administration can help with. Administration already has the electronic process for voting and everything. So, unless the election committee comes back with suggestions, we would just do the same procedure.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's parent and a teacher, and another teacher. Left side of my cube.
Twist her arm.
It's soft, but yeah.
Thank you.
Does that mean she wants a chair?
Okay, I think that's it for the election, so looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing how that
Yeah.
comes up. Great.
It's pretty well done.
Yeah. Next up, we have a calendar amendment. Oh, sorry.
Do we have to do number 2 still, or? For,
Okay, for the remaining 2, does anybody have any names for community member? I do not yet, so I would just put out another plea to anyone who's listening, and I do know we were gonna reach out to the alumni.
Yep,
Did you do
Justin
that
did
already?
post, we haven't
Okay.
heard anything yet.
So we are in need of appointing, so we're looking for volunteers who'd be interested in helping us move towards our mission and vision.
Can we clarify what a community member means? Like, do they have to be a resident of Woodbury?
We do have that in the bylaws, right?
You just have to be a resident of Minnesota.
They can't work here or have children here.
Correct.
And then I guess we would ask why they're interested in helping us out, right? Which would be, I think they would come and they would.
It has to be a resident of Minnesota and of a certain age.
21, I think.
21.
I think we're following Minnesota election law.
Good point. So 21 years of age, Minnesota resident, that would love to see us improve our school. Okay. Thank you. So do we need to do we need to officially, we probably should endorse the election committee? So can somebody make a motion?
I make a motion to appoint Maggie chair of the election committee, supported by Dan and Teresa.
I'll second that.
Right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think I'll vote in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Abstain, against?
Technically, if you abstain, you approve of the motion moving
Oh.
forward, or you are not approve, but content with how the motion moves forward. Sorry.
We have 3 people on it, so I was okay to vote. I mean, we only have 6 here tonight. I voted for. You guys okay with the 4 vote, or do you want to?
I'm good with the 4 vote.
All right, next up, approval of the calendar, April
Okay.
7th, May 8th.
All right, so we have a drive day coming up where, there's no transportation on April 7th. So that's one, because Woodbury does not have school on that day. So that's one day that we don't want to have because it's kind of an issue with equity too. It's like if some parents can't provide transportation, they're dependent on busing to get their students here. That's why we're looking at changing this day to being, instead of being an on-campus day, to being a digital learning day. And I'll explain the definition of that as well. We also, as you know, the state granted all schools 5 e-learning days through the year for inclement weather. Unfortunately, this past week, we've used our 5th and our 6th day on a Wednesday and Thursday of last week because of the weather. And of course, when Woodbury closes, we do because there are transportation. So in talking with MDE, they are not, there was an email that went out from MDE, they are not adding to the 5 days. The 5 days are the 5 days, and they're not going to extend to that. But talking with Jeff Patnode from MDE, who's in charge of digital learning and e-learning, he suggested, when I talked to him about the transportation day, he says schools those digital learning days that are approved and in your school calendar in advance do not count for your 5 e-learning days. So if they're in your calendar, and that's why I'm bringing it here tonight, because April 7th isn't a ways away, if we approve it, it'd change from a on-campus day to a digital learning day. Does not count for one of our 5 days of e-learning. Plus also, because now we have to make up a day, because we've exceeded our 5. May 8th was a teacher work day, and we are proposing to make that a digital learning day for our students. So instead of extending the school year into June another day, we'll just make up that day on May 8th. So the calendar reflects, and I change it to a turquoise blue, and you'll see that for April 7th and April 8th, or May 8th, to be digital learning days, which keeps us at 165 minimum contact days. Questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, South Washington County, APP, they put the April 7th date in their calendar like last year.
Right.
So why didn't we?
I really can't speak to it, because when the calendar, it changed and we didn't catch it. Our fault as far as changing that date later on to a day. So for some reason, it became a they didn't have school and it stayed in our calendar. So somehow it was missed.
And then if we have another snow day, because we still have March.
Yes. We haven't hit March yet, yes.
Yeah, and that can,
Well, April 21st
yeah, that's what
is
I
another day where we do not have school.
in case we still have
But-
one more.
Woodbury does have school for their 6th through 12th graders on April 21st. April 21st
Okay.
is, for some reason, we have the day off. So April 21st is a K-5 is off, but 6-12 is. So we could still get busing, so if we needed to, we could add April 21st back in and have it an on-campus day.
So that's the contingency.
So we have another day if we need to add another
Because
day
I'm like,
back.
we're not done with winter.
I know.
And it's been insane already, so I just didn't know, like, do we have a little more wiggle room with that day? Okay.
So Randy, can we ask that you first confirm with busing that if the 21st does need to happen, we
Yeah,
can
I already-
verify that,
yep.
and then we can put that notice out to the community, so that way preparation can be made in case of.
Just in case as our fallback day, if we
Yes.
need to, I can do that, yeah. And I just, yeah.
So like an email announcement?
In his update.
In my work, my
Yes.
weekly, I'll just say,
Yeah.
just in case we have one other day, I'll mention these 2 days will be digital learning days. We will be sending out expectations, just for, so students, families, we already talked to teachers, what are the expectations for those digital learning days?
Yeah.
So we'll clarify so everybody's on the same page.
Is there any, maybe it's not related to the calendar, sorry, I don't want to be off topic, we really wouldn't, but is there any requirements from MDE on Digital Learning Day? Because the only reason I ask is when we had it last week, some students from different schools were saying they basically just had attendance. They needed to click it at 10 o'clock and that was it.
Unfortunately, there's not a set, this is what it must be. It's up to each school to develop their own plan.
Okay.
But it has to be equitable, so you need to make sure your plan includes if students do not have technology at home, that somehow you make accommodations for them as well. So that's one expectation, and you do need to do something, figure out how you're doing attendance. Those are the requirements, but it's up to each school to come up with their own plan and then also communicate what that plan is. So,
Is there a limit on how many we could do?
there wasn't, but, digital learning isn't the same as being on campus, but yeah.
Yes.
Right. And I think, yeah, so. And just so you know too, just South Washington just passed their 23-24 school calendar. Our calendar committee is in the process now. They met on Friday of last week, and they're in the process of getting our calendar ready. So maybe by the March meeting, hopefully, we'll have a calendar to approve for 23-24. But we will keep an eye on South Washington, if anything changes with their calendar, that we also make those changes as needed.
Can I make a motion to approve the calendar?
I'll second.
Any seconds? Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so calendar passes. 6, thanks Randy. 6-4, I would say, can we do the bus agreement and take a break? Okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So busing,
Okay, bus agreement, we just need to let both MDE and South Washington know by March 1, tomorrow, if we let them know tomorrow's the deadline, if we're using their transportation or if we're using our own contracted service. So nothing is changing, as we know, for next year, so we are, as you can see our agreement, we are letting South Washington know that we will be using their buses for the 23-24 school year. Any questions?
I move to approve the bus. Second. Edel, you second?
I second.
Okay. Further discussion? Can you keep up?
Trying.
I'm sorry, I talk fast.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, so bus passes 6-0. And I have 6:33, I'm going to make a motion for a 10-minute break.
I'll second.
90 seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Can you, silence and community will be back.
I completely agree.
I need a Wendell.
Something
Look at
like
this. Oh, I almost took my phone out, Wendell. Just a habit.
I mean, it's just comfortable to pull it out.
It's natural for me.
If it's face down and you're just not
Ooh,
concentrating.
can I do a face thing? I would be tempted to. All right, okay, I think we're ready.
You're on.
Oh, we're on, okay,
Yeah.
great. So welcome back, everyone, 6:43. Thanks for being timely. So we are going to continue our board meeting for tonight, section 15. We are looking at item E, discuss merger expansion status, next step. So, Mr. Vetch.
Okay. Well, the administration, as you know, I've been meeting and working on putting together some information for our publics regarding the potential merger between our two schools. And there's a PowerPoint with just some of the information to share with everybody. The second attachment is a brief, which is about 34 pages long, and I know that's a lot to read over a weekend, but that is not something we were going to discuss tonight. We just want to provide you that information. That's something that we'll go over in March, kind of discuss, and continue to add to that, because there's a lot more information we want to share, but this is what we've been working on. We want to share this out with what we came up with. So anyway, so really the merger rationale, there's three. It is, why do we want to merge? Well, it is an opportunity to provide a seamless pre-K to 12 quality education to our families. Yes, we don't have a pre-K yet, or WLA doesn't, but that's, their goal down the road. But to have a seamless K-12 experience for all of our families and students, an opportunity to further solidify the strong financial standing of a merged organization. And third is an opportunity to provide additional programming, operational resources, and services to our stakeholders.
Can I just
Sure.
interject a comment? So first off, thank you so much for all the folks that helped pull this together. I think fantastic work. So for those of you watching remotely, if you get a chance, this document will be available, correct?
Yes.
Or is already available?
It's available on the website.
Okay, so please take a look at this. I think clearly some time went into, pulling together the reasons for. And also I like this slide just because it's kind of clearly articulating the rationale for a merger, right? So I think that's been a lot of the questions that come, why are we doing this?
Right.
So this is why, right? So,
Exactly.
thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. And then the next slide is really, the next two slides are about math and science. Just for, now also WA, we combined and did this PowerPoint, so they shared theirs this last night at their board meeting, and we're sharing it tonight for our families. I think we already know a little bit about MSA, but just some of our highlights and some things about our mission, our vision, our number of students, teachers, average class size, of course, our niche and world's best, U.S. News and World Reports, our rankings. You can see that in the next two slides, some of our core values and who we are. And then the next two are on Woodbury Leadership Academy. About their curriculum overview, some of the things they highlight, their enrollment, their number of teachers. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Going back to the MSA vision, mission, and academics.
Yep.
I mean, you have on that slide, it says rigorous curriculum, which I struggle with that word because in our mission and vision, it's accelerated.
Right.
We have a reputation of rigor. And I believe that there's two factors here. I mean, I was just conflicted with that statement there of rigorous curriculum. I wish it would have stated accelerated curriculum because that is our mission.
Okay. Thank you. I know that's something we actually talked about, I think, at the merger committee meeting, wasn't it? About that use, so yes. Thanks for bringing that up.
That upper right.
Okay.
That's what I saw, sorry.
And then, some of the things about, the vision of Woodbury Leadership Academy, their mission, their strategic priorities, a little about their leadership program and their core values. Our merger committee actually did look at how they go hand in hand. We kind of looked at the different mission and vision from both of our schools and wanted to see the fit, and kind of did some comparisons with those items. I'm trying to get my dates all mixed up. February 17th, we had a teacher professional development day. And for a little bit of the day, we started the day off at Woodbury Leadership Academy and joined both of our teaching groups together. We met there. We did a little welcoming, kind of did some introductions, got to meet a little, teachers got to meet each other. We did a little tour of Woodbury Leadership Academy and were able to ask some questions and just walk around. We were there for about a little over an hour. And then in the afternoon, that same opportunity was for Woodbury Leadership Academy to come to our school, walk around to see our school, learn a little bit about us. We asked all the teachers from both schools we sent a survey to all of them just to get their input. How do you feel about, the fit, and some of these questions. There were 5 questions. They were open-ended questions. So there weren't any canned answers where they had to pick one of them. They just were able to fill in whatever they want. So one of the questions was about what are our values of our schools? And this is from both schools. So you can see some of this first slide is some of the values that we really treasure. Small class size, curriculum support, community, diversity, equity. So you can read some of those on there, some of those values that we both honor. Another question was, what opportunities do the teachers see in a merger? And of course, you can see the largest was the blue, which was a continuous curriculum. And this was from from teachers. And then you can see some of the answers. We're stronger together, expanded opportunities for students, stronger teacher teams, stronger middle school curriculum. So those were the big ones that were brought up by our teaching staff as far as the opportunities. What excites teachers about a merger? You can see that green is quite large, almost 60%. Said a whole child, the K-12 experience for all of our kids, that our students are able to have that continual curriculum, a continual educational program. Other answers were financial security, improved facilities, and then more collaboration, or what's excited the teachers. And then, what concerns do you have about the merger? You can see there's a lot of different answers in there. Some are timing. Are we going too fast? Are we taking our time? Are we going through that? Staff turnover, uniforms in the secondary, not enough information, need time to work together before, moving facilities, maintaining consistent administrators, maintaining accountability, new teaching assignments, class sizes, consistent culture, values, curriculum, developing systems for more students, financial feasibility, and forgetting the elementary students. So those are some of the things that were mentioned in some of their concerns about a merger. So a lot all around the board.
Do you know what that means, forgetting the elementary students?
I think is it not had enough emphasis on just the elementary that were K-12 that we're forgetting about them? Yeah. Okay. The merger process. So, there's kind of 4 steps as we move across the continuum. So, what is the strategy for merging our schools? How does a merger align with with our 2-school strategy? What gaps in the current strategic plan are accelerated? So some things we need to look at as strategy, and then make sure we're doing our due diligence, checking out the fit, strategic rationale, identity, operational efficiencies, begin with high-level integration planning, administrator meetings, select integration leaders, so some of that, doing that due diligence as we move forward. And then the execution of a merger, merger, structure defined in agreement, planning of the merger, the MD requirement that I shared during the director's report. The articles of merger, which is part of that. The same with the signing and filing, surviving school, authorizer, executing the charter school. So all that merger execution, which is really defined by that planned merger. And then the integration, executing the communication plan, communicating to our stakeholders, students, families, community, teachers, staff, vendors, everybody communicating and executing that. And then executing our operational integration plan. So all this is part of that process and that of a merger and planning that out. And then the public board fiduciary duties. In the context of a significant decision as a merger, it's important to review the standards that charter school members are held to. So looking at some of those, like we've talked about as board members, the duties of, duty of care and diligence to act, with a care, a responsible, prudent person would use under this similar circumstances and act in good faith. Duty of loyalty, duty of obedience, duty of oversight. Basically, it's saying fiduciary responsibility is to do what is right for the organization. So we're all kind of going in this with the right frame of mind that we're working in the best fiduciary responsibility and our duties to make this successful. And then our last is our administration and board process. Deloitte and MSA administrators will meet together frequently during the diligence period, and that's what we're doing now. The administration will work independently with their own schools, and we're also doing that too, as Kathy's working with WLA, we're working with MSA, kind of making sure that our processes and everything are fitting. The board members should be mindful of the conflicts of interest and must adhere to their fiduciary duties. And then the role of WLA and MSA merger committees is to work in tandem to address questions and concerns from their respective communities. They will share out information with their school administrators. So working through all this. There's a lot here. So, this is just some of the stuff that we're getting into place and working through as we start putting this whole merger plan process into place. Is it what is best for both schools? So this is some of the stuff we've been working on over the last month. We meet weekly with the administration just to keep working on that. And you'll see also, if you look at that brief, a lot of information is in there. The transportation, the financial budget, curriculum. We're working on all those pieces that are part of that. So then both boards can really see that, what does this mean? So you can make an intelligent decision based on all of the data and all the information. Any questions at all from anybody?
Just a comment, so thanks for all the hard work. You can tell, I feel like this last month we've made some significant progress in the questions of does a merger make sense, right? So maybe a question, because you have more interaction with WLA, and I didn't get a chance to watch their meeting last night, but did they make any progress, or where are they sitting with? They shared the same presentation, is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We did touch base with Kathy this morning because they were done, just to kind of see where their meeting was. And a lot of people had some questions up front, but it seemed like the tone of the meeting kind of switched, and it seemed much more pro-merger towards the end of the meeting. I think a lot of families still have questions,
Sure.
And some of those pieces of, what is it going to look like yet? And I think that's really part of that communication process. And, as we start looking into this, what is that going to look like? They have different questions than what we would have, like, what curriculums are we using, or are we wearing uniforms and all those types of things, but,
And their questions for our merger committee
Yeah.
are starting to come in.
Okay.
So once we get those, we will then
yeah.
have a merger committee.
Sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But they're
broke-
starting to
yeah,
gather them, because
exactly.
they're running their system different because they had a larger number of people want to be part of their committees.
Yeah, I think they have like 4 separate committees, and each committee's tabulating their own questions, and then they'll send it to our merger committee, and then we'll answer those questions and send them back to them. We're also looking at coordinating on our website, more information that will have all that there that'll be the same for both schools. So we'll have like a frequently asked questions, so all the answers will be on there, so if parents, stakeholders, whoever wants to go on the website can get a lot of answers to whatever it might be. Or look and see what other questions there are that other people might have had.
And when we came up with our questions, some of the questions were more specific for their administration or for a merger committee their questions are coming in the same manner, and so they're trying to determine which ones are for us and a merger committee, but which ones might be for the board, and which ones might be for administration.
And maybe it's to you, both of you, does the school have what it needs, let's say from the board? Do you need anything else? I've heard ideas of like, we need to hire an outside person, or do we have what we need to keep going down and answer these questions, the due diligence in particular?
I think once we get their questions and we start working and get a little bit further down the process, I think once we get this information, the board decides, yes, let's go forward, then we'll need some input and some help in getting some of that stuff moving forward.
And maybe timing-wise, just because I know that we'll be asking the
Right.
question, where are we at timing-wise? Are we going to come back next month with?
Well,
progress, or-
and one thing, I know at our last board meeting, we said we'd bring it here for some decision. Well, if you wear WLA every time there's a snowstorm, it seems like they have a board meeting. So, of course, they had one last week, and that's why they had it last night. So they're a little bit behind us, so we wanted to kind of just get the information out here. And in March, hopefully we'll have more information, so we'll get closer to both boards being maybe ready to make a decision. We might need to have a special meeting in the beginning of April. We'll have to kind of see where we're at. I think we'll get a better gauge at the March meeting where both boards are at in a decision, or if they need more information. I think March will really tell us a lot, because we'll have a lot more information for both of our boards, and I think we'll be pretty much aligned at pretty much at the same spot to move forward or to decide.
Other questions?
Questions or comments or?
Or comments, yeah.
I think just looking at this information and only having the weekend to look at it, I think what excites me from my stance as a teacher is the opportunities of continuous curriculum. I think establishing this K-12 curriculum is fundamental in the success for all students. And it's clear that from both sides, that's what's driving us right now. The other thing that really excites me too is the idea of collaboration and expanding what we can do collectively as a staff. And I think that's something that should be celebrated in this. And decisions haven't been made yet. I think when we talked about expansion, same opportunities. Is there opportunities to expand curriculum? Is there opportunity to expand collaboration with teachers? It's going to be a tough decision.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. DJ?
Yeah, I appreciate what you have to say. I agree completely, Wendell. I also noticed, though, that the one biggest talking point in the word find was curriculum. And certainly that is probably a concern for both schools, since they are different curriculums that are in play. And I guess my question at this point, since we're still kind of early in that process of exploring, have you had any conversations with the administration, WLA, about the curriculum that are both being used? Because I think of it as a middle school teacher, so that's the hat that I kind of have to wear. That's the merge point, right? That's where the two schools would come together if a merge would happen. So in that capacity, I guess that would be a biggest concern for the folks at WLA, as well as our own school. So have you had any initial conversations?
We've started conversations in that area, yes. And I know that's something we're even looking at our own curriculum as we're meeting with our PLCs, as far as what are we offering as we go forward and looking at some of that too. But yes, we've started the conversation, and we kind of need to see how does, in core knowledge is something that they're really passionate about, and how does that fit into our curriculum, and, and how's that match up? So I think it'll be a good match. But that's something we'll continue to look into as we move forward.
Just one more comment. So I like that idea that a merger should not just be an addition of two things, right? We should get something. Synergies thrown out a lot, but 1 + 1 should be 3, something to that effect. And you have it spelled out here where together we're going to be stronger financially, right? Together we're going to be able to offer curriculum, or let's say special programs or what have you that we couldn't do on our own. So I think there's a number of things pointing towards merger, just being the right direction we want to take the organization. So let's see, where it all comes out, if it still continues to make sense, but there's a number of opportunities for us to kind of continue to explore it. So, thank you. Good, all right, can I move us on then to, because no decision tonight, just discussion. Right?
Oh, can I add one more
Yeah.
comment? I appreciated the opportunity during our staff workday to communicate with some of the staff. Had some wonderful conversations both there, and then they came over and visited and found my office and continued those conversations. So that opportunity, I thought, was really wonderful and well executed. So, thank you.
Since DJ jumped in, I want to say too, I also found that, and at the end of the day, it was very clear that teachers have the heart of their students at their heart, and we all want the best for our students wherever we end up being. It was encouraging to see that. I don't know, I remember one parent said, "You're going to like each other, like that's not a problem, like we all love kids and students, and we want to work to see the best for them." So it's, whatever happens, we could definitely work with them, and they could work with us. Yeah.
And that's part of that process why we wanted to meet, is because how do we really know if it's a great fit if we don't ever put our staffs together? So it was the start of something to kind of get an opportunity for our teachers to meet up a little bit and just to get to know each other. And, that's how we can determine culture and fit and all those pieces when they start meeting and talking and conversing.
All right, so more to come for those watching along remotely and here. Then I think we're up to section F, approving second reading, policy 102.1, the equity and inclusion. So, Heather, can you take us through that?
There were 3 changes. I think the title is now Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Policy. And if the students are happy with that, is that the final?
This copy?
No,
title.
the title.
Oh.
Because versus the racial equity and inclusion, do the students have a preference?
I don't think there's a preface because it wouldn't change the meaning of the policy, but
Okay.
I just noticed there's some references within the policy, though, that do state racial
Yeah, exactly.
equity, inclusion, so I think we should make sure that it's consistent
Yeah.
throughout the
Absolutely.
policy.
Yeah. So that small change, and there we changed the indigenous land acknowledgement to be more specific to our parcel for our campus. And that is something we can discuss, or if somebody has any ideas, or?
Do we need to state how that's presented? I mean, that was part of the discussion earlier tonight. Does that have to be reflected in the policy?
well, the policy does say that it'll be said at the school board meetings and other designated school events, which I interpret as like graduations, because when I went to like 833's graduation last year for their high school, they did recite this, so.
Yeah, it says meaningfully affirmed. So that's why I asked, how do we want to, maybe I should have said, how do we want to meaningfully affirm that statement? Do we want to have it read? Do we want to put it somewhere? Or both?
I think both.
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in the acknowledgement.
Okay. And that's kind of what we decided before, right? We put it up with the mission vision.
And then there might have been a lettering correction or a numbering correction. And I can't remember. Just in the outline form.
The page number?
Oh, we added page numbers. Yes. Page numbers were added. And there's, Emma has tried and she cannot get rid of the page breaks.
Oh, the weird.
Yeah, so that's, and there's an orphan, little phrase on,
Page 4.
yeah, so Emma did say that she would try again. And,
In my reading,
yeah,
I did see under 2D, I'm not sure if I'm just reading this wrong or if there needs to be a correction here. It says, "We will state as a school that the lives of Black, Indigenous, and students, staff, and community members of color matter." Am I reading that right?
that is right, and
Okay.
it's just to get, I think, just to get the "we" at the front. So I guess we could
it-
start,
Sorry. Could it read, "We all state as a school that the lives of our students, staff, and community members are of Black, Indigenous, color matter"? And it's just the way how that reads, I'm not a language arts teacher, I'm sorry. I tell my kids that all the time, I'm a band teacher. But if that's how it's supposed to read.
that is how it's supposed to read, but definitely understand the feeling, and it doesn't read as smoothly. But I don't know how to change it, or to make it. We will state as a school that the lives of our Black, Indigenous, and maybe that's where the comma needs to
Yeah,
go.
there needs to
Yeah,
be.
I think it's, if we put the comma
Does it need to, does the
after
and have to be there?
Indigenous, and so take out the comma after staff. That way that next three flows, so we have students, staff, and community members of color matter. So, Black, comma, Indigenous, comma, and then the triple, students, staff, and community members, take out the comma after staff, members of color matter. Maybe that'll, we will state as a school that the lives of our Black, Indigenous, comma, and students, staff, and community members of color matter.
Yeah. What do you think, English teacher?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, the way I was reading it, something felt like it was missing, and I just wanted to ensure that that was
Comma,
correct.
placement.
Yeah.
Further thoughts?
I know in local, recent trainings that I've been to, I know that the analogy of the BBPA is being adapted, or
The acronym?
the acronym, BBIA, Black, Brown, Indigenous,
Indigenous, Asian.
Asian is being adapted. And that could be a future item, an amendment later. I'm just curious if, since the students brought this forward, if they're aware of that, or,
I've never heard of that before.
okay. I can provide more information later. I'm just-
Yeah, yeah. It would be.
I had a comment, I had a chance, and I think we're getting much closer, so thanks for all the hard work on this one. I did check with our lawyer, just because it's a new policy, to see, what, if anything, should we be looking for. I will say, the feedback came back that we just have to be mindful where we can duplicate things. So if we have like a discrimination policy, 506, and then we have a student discipline comment in this, we just, as we're creating and drafting policies, if we have it in two places, we need to make sure that the administration knows where to follow up with, right? So if we have an issue of harassment or of bullying or of discipline, do we use the new 102.1 or do we use the 506? So we need to be clear for administration as we're doing this together. So I'm not saying no to this, but it's just something for us to be mindful as we draft new policies. It needs to work together with the existing ones that we have as well. And I think we have to be careful because we have policies and we're trying to be more assertive in where we're trying to push our school, right? That's what I'm hearing from the students. So that means, by definition, we're going to be pushing the boundaries a little bit, but we have to be mindful of what we have. If we need to make amendments to other ones, or we make amendments to new ones as they come up, just please be cautious as we do that. That's what I'm asking.
The point of clarity is, for a policy to be reviewed by our lawyer, doesn't there have to be a majority consent of the board in order to have that happen?
No, very good question, though. I think in June, I'm given authority to use our lawyer as needed. So I did, and I sent the results to the board. So,
But is that with majority or through executive director?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Do you have the sole responsibility, let's say, to just go to the lawyer whenever you, or do you have to have consent of the board or the executive director to have this reviewed?
Yeah, good question. So I think the board voted in June to give me the authority to reach out to the lawyer. So that is because otherwise, every time we needed a question, like even last night, I needed to contact the lawyer. I felt we needed to, so I have the authority to do it as board chair. But sadly, the rest of the board doesn't have the authority. But if there's any question that needs legal advice, then I would ask that you send it to me, and then I can reach out to them. And the only reason we did that is so that it costs a lot of money to have things done, and so I think it makes sense for the school to kind of funnel, so we don't have the same question, because they would definitely charge us if we had the same question come from 3, or if you reach out to different lawyers, right? So, and that's my understanding. We can revisit that, but I have the authority to reach out on behalf of the board as the board chair. But that could be taken away too if we make a motion to take it away.
Like Billy said, just plain clarity.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I needed to learn that myself because I don't have the authority to reach out until the board gives it to me. I'm just one board member, but I was given that authority as chair.
I did appreciate that feedback that you did receive and you sharing that out with the board. Reading through that, still feel strongly that this policy stands on its own. So,
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for taking the time to read through it. I think that's all I can ask is, we have a new policy, let's make sure we're doing it right. So, okay.
Can we talk about the title of the policy again?
Yep.
I just want to, I want to get it right. Do we want it to say racial equity and inclusion or diversity?
I think when we look at the content of the policy, it would make more sense for it to be racial.
Okay.
But what do you guys think?
I want the students to be able to identify with it. So when you see this, when you and your fellow students see this, what captures you? What, better way to say that? What would the students want? I personally don't think it's a big deal either way. So
Yeah. I mean, when we look at the purpose, it talks about honoring and recognizing the multiple racial and ethnic groups within society in MSA, so I think it would make more sense for it to be racial.
We'll just change the title, because down on letter V, it says 102.1, racial, equity, inclusion, and on top it says diversity, so just can either.
So a title change and 1 comma change, right? Is that right?
Yes, and the page numbers might change.
If we can get that white space cleared up. Yeah.
Right.
Other questions or comments?
Is
No,
that-
to your points, when I think of racial, it's specific to the conversation of skin color. So when we think of diversity, that includes everybody from racial color, skin color to LGBT to ability. I think diversity is a little more broad spectrum,
I agree.
whereas this is racial would be more specific to. So I just my point of perspective of that influences.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Is this something that we need to vote on? Solidifying the title of the policy, or is it?
Can we include that with the second reading?
I mean, if you amend it with that title, can we vote on it that way?
Next time?
Oh,
No, you could amend.
With the second
You
reading.
You could make the motion with those changes, correct?
yeah, that's what I'm.
Oh,
I
okay.
think we can do that.
Okay.
Change the word, a comma,
Okay.
and the page number. Would you like to do so, Anna?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve 102.1 titled, will be titled Racial Equity and Inclusion Policy with page number changes, comma changes, I lost the section, and that's it.
I will second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so 1.1 passes 6-0. Good. Next one up, we have lottery results, item G.
Okay, we conducted the lottery on February 15th. We enrolled, we'll be offering 80 positions in sixth grade. We had 224 applicants, but we're offering to 80 of them, and the rest are on the wait list. And because right now, there were no vacancies in grades 7 through 12 as of yet, because, and if we are notified that someone's not returning, we'll go to the wait list. So we used the lottery for the other grades just to create the wait list order. So I have the names of those with signatures from myself, Teresa, DJ, and then Justin Garrick, who helped, and I think Joel might have signed it too, for these lists.
Can anything change if, let's say the merger goes through next year, can we get more, or do we stop at 80 regardless for next year?
It's something we can look at and add. For ninth grade, yes. If we do, if a merger is voted on, there'll be the eighth graders that are currently at WLA. They don't have ninth grade, so we would increase our ninth grade numbers to include those students.
So we'd come back and revisit?
We'd come back and revisit it, yes. Or if we decide that we can enroll 85 sixth graders because we lost more in the upper grades or something, because we don't put in 11th and 12th as much, so we could. As someone I think mentioned, why don't we load more 6th and 7th graders, because if we lose them up to the top, so it's something we can look at depending on our numbers.
Comments, questions? I will make a motion to approve the lottery results.
I'll second.
Sorry, did it make more sense for you if you were there?
Oh,
That maybe you get something to say.
yeah, Teresa.
Okay, Teresa's second. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so approved. Thanks, Randy. Next one I had on the amended agenda is H, so we have H, I, and J on my version. H was Reform Annual Fund Campaign of Subcommittee of Finance, correct? Okay.
So at our finance committee last, that was added yesterday.
Yeah, it's not in your notes, sorry, we
Great.
added that.
So it's reform the AFC committee.
I passed.
Stop it.
Cut down on that time. It was brought to our attention by Justin Gearing that before COVID, we had the AFC committee, and their responsibility was to review and distribute donations through the Give to the Max campaign and other donations that come through. As we move forward, there was a lot of fundraising events that happened that were put on hold, and there's been questions and comments and suggestions that we bring a lot of these events back, and I think that it's for the financial success of our school. I think this is a great opportunity. So I'm asking if we can reestablish the AFC committee, but make it a subcommittee of the finance committee. Because I think before it was a committee all of its own, and then as we were cutting through the committee lists, I think that was where it was, but I think it fits with the finance committee.
Just a question. One of the reasons, we had a lot of committees before, right? And so that's why, at least we were trying to be intentional about, do these need to be boards or, board committee, or do they need to exist at all? Or do we just call like an election one, we need it for a month and then it closes again, right? So is this one that needs to be a board one, or is it administration? I get the tie to finance for sure,
Yeah.
right? But should we be leading that, or should it be led by the, just a question,
Led by
by the administration?
the administration. I think it can be, but I definitely think it should go through the finance committee, because I mean, you're the ones that look through the finances of things.
So I guess that would it, because I'm still, I think the finance committee is, we need it. You have to have a finance committee, that's the board that has a finance committee. But the people that attend the finance committee can be more flexible, so it could be an administrative committee.
Yeah,
And even the board, somebody from the board can sit in on, as long as they don't have quorum, right?
yeah.
I'm just asking, does it need to be through the board, or could it report in through your finance updates?
I mean, I can see that, yeah. So we're calling for a committee led by administration, seated with stakeholders.
Yeah, I think we'll have, hopefully we'll have participation from the community. I think board, if anyone wants to sit on it from the board, I think they're welcome to, as long as we don't get to 5. If we're for the board, we can't have 5. So I'm just saying, can we run it that way as a suggestion, just to not add another committee for us to manage?
Randy, what's your opinion?
Well, we do have an annual fund committee already as one of our committees in our staff. Justin's on it, that's about it. But anyways, but would that maybe fit into there?
Like I said,
Piece of it
that
is-
information, Justin was the one that brought it
Right.
back. So I'm guessing that committee hasn't met yet, and so
Yeah,
Justin's
right.
calling on it.
So it's just Justin and I, but if we made it more of
Yeah.
a, that would fit there, and it is a school committee.
What I would like to help with, is the board, I think, can help with, is we have an audience, if they're watching, so please, if you're interested in getting some of these activities going again, raise your hand and reach out to Wendell, and connect them right to Randy.
Because I think a committee like this would be more successful if we had stakeholders outside of just teachers in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my recollection, when we did it before the pandemic, we had parents helping, and they were fun, and we should bring these back, so I'm all for it, we just need to figure out the right way.
And I could put it in the communication too.
What about, how does it overlap with the PTO? Do the PTO have fundraising that?
That's for PTO though.
Yeah,
Those funds
agreed.
go,
I
those
just-
funds go into the PTO.
Okay.
But like we had a that was the dragon dinner, right? And there's some other things that we used to do that
we
we.
consider that ours and not PTO? I feel it's a little bit weird, right? I mean, we're doing a fundraiser for the school.
It just depends.
I mean, there's
some
different groups,
schools-
I got it,
right.
but I don't know, I would rather work together with the PTO
Agreed.
and figure out how to bring.
There's some things we could work in collaboration, but
Yeah.
there's some things they do that goes to
Sure.
their needs, and there's things that,
Yeah.
right?
So could we make the motion that the AFC committee would report through the finance committee? Because like you said, it's already established.
Right.
It just needs to be met, they just need to be meeting and discussing it. They also, I think the committee, the purpose of this committee too is to plan and implement the fundraisers that the school goes through, because we were told that it is not the sole responsibility of our executive director to run fundraising. There needs to be a committee, there needs to be support, there needs to be help, and I think that we should have the AFC committee should be that committee. Does that make sense?
It does, I just want to make sure that we're clear on how it's run, so are you thinking like, right now you have a few different updates on the finance, another one might be the AFC update there, like.
It could be included in my notes.
Yeah.
So that way,
And then if you need anything specific from the board, we just had an item that month, right, you said you need to decide whatever.
yeah.
Because it's stuff, it's information we need to know to do our budget. How much are we bringing in for fundraising or other avenues besides, your pupil count and so forth.
Get the max fall under that AFC?
It could.
Mhm.
Right now, it's kind of its own little thing right now, but. it
Right,
would,
but I'm just
yeah.
thinking that seems like that would be a natural
It'd
fit.
be- Yes.
It would be nice to have that kind of coordinated, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit clearer for our constituents.
Sure.
Here's
Yeah.
what we're gonna ask, right? and why. Like the last time we did it for the vans, right, was something tangible for people to respond to.
To your point of the Dragon Dinner, could that be brought back? Absolutely. We would though have to think, how are we fundraising? Because I know there was a lot of question around equity when it came to that fundraiser. There were items that could be raffled off, but certain families couldn't afford to meet the expectations of their families. So to make that a more equitable experience is what needs to be thought out.
There's lots to do, but I think that was a fun time to also get to talk with the folks, right? In a setting which is more relaxed, perhaps, and fun.
We can look at other fundraisers that are more equitable, so I think it's something that committee can start brainstorming and get some stakeholders, some parents involved, maybe some students.
So can I say, I task the administration to reenact or what's the word? Reform the AFC committee and welcome any stakeholders interested in participating in, and call to stakeholders to reach out for participation.
Are you okay with that, Randy?
I'm fine.
Okay. So you want to make it official, I can second. So you're asking administration to revisit that one, but flow through the finance committee? Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Any further
Do you
discussion?
need me to repeat that?
I think I've got it.
Okay.
This one I think I got.
Okay. Any discussion, yes?
Let's put it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 6-0. We had 102.2 policy discussion, and that was moved out as we were setting the agenda yesterday. So,
I have a question. If it was removed from the consent agenda by a board member that's not here tonight? I mean, I'm just curious.
it's a fair question. We did have more discussions with lawyers than I was expecting today, I will say. And one of them was, where do we leave it off? And they said basically we went to recess, so the stuff that happened up until about the point where we thought we lost quorum stands. So the way I would read it is, if it was pulled out when we were talking through there, then we take it as that. So if you guys are okay with that. And the other thing I would just add, as we talked through it all, start the discussion is, new policies, probably, it makes sense that we have a discussion anyway. We need to have public comment, which we did have yesterday, opportunity. We need to have public comment again the next time, right? We need to have it twice. That's the way we set up policies. So I think we should be okay with that. And I think procedural ones, that's what the consent agenda is for. So let's all be mindful, myself included, of making sure we use that consent agenda properly going forward. So questions, comments, 102.2. Tonight was slated for a first read, pulled out, now discussion, so. I appreciate, and I don't believe the students here, but I appreciate the courage it takes to come up and address the board. I mean, I think that's fantastic. I was encouraged by students. I can't imagine doing that. You do it every month here, but I mean, it's not easy to come, and yesterday we had kind of a packed room, so coming and expressing your feelings. Any further discussion? Just a question, do we need to approve it as a first read then?
We would, because it was on the consent agenda, or was approved on the consent, so.
It
we
was
would
pulled
need to-
out, I think.
Right, so we would need
pulled
to.
out, so I think we should make it a first read and make it official.
Right, so then it could be included in the second reads next month,
time,
correct?
yeah. That would be.
And I would like to see it emergently passed today. The board is accepting in that motion to give that consideration.
Maybe making a motion to emergently pass.
I am making a motion to emergently pass it.
Do we have a second?
I second.
So then we'll discuss, I guess, maybe could you explain the emergency?
Yeah,
we talked at governance about implementing equity policies equitably. And the one policy route didn't quite work. I think the kids want to be able to identify and see themselves in initiatives that advance their identities, their diversities. So then we started working with the different reps and groups to do just that. They started bringing forth what they felt they identified with. And it does go back to 2019, to the investigation, to the report that was completed, to the wonderful improvement plan that the board endorsed and put in writing to our authorizer. So we have this long history of promising improvement. And I think when it comes to 102.2, so it's been a long time. From the student perspective, it's been 21 something months, I think. If you take it back from the point where their petition came forward, which to me is the time when they found their voice, their courage to kind of bring it forward. This group of students are not able to be, what Alex did yesterday was insanely courageous. But I don't think that this group of students can be as outspoken as some of our, thankfully, other racial diversity students can be. So I don't want to neglect their feelings and their needs, especially because they might not have that voice. So, and honestly, after hearing Alex speak yesterday, it's hard to hear a child struggle with where to go to the bathroom. So, if nothing more, at least we saw that today. So that's why I would like, and I have my more formal 208 compliance statement that I've done. So that's why.
Last question. Motion is emergent capacity.
And when it's when something like the one today, the 201.1 was emergently passed, it still has a second reading. It's just goes into effect before the second reading.
Yeah, and I will be actually, we're actually in the process of looking at 208, and I have a question out to MSBA on clarifying the language in there a little bit, whether we approve it at the end of our second read or if it needs to go on the agenda. Yeah, it's just a funny sentence. So how we implement, how we procedurally do that right, I can't promise yet today. We've always done it after the second read, but we might have to put it on the agenda a third time, depending on a third time for formal approval. We'll see once I get something back.
So I just noticed, hello, that it says 102.1 at the bottom of the page, and I don't want that to come back and bite us.
Thanks for catching that, yeah.
Other questions or comments?
I too would like to thank Alex and the other students who could not raise their voice to developing this policy. And that their courage, their bravery is extremely important to be recognized.
I do have another point to make that I think is important to just state. Outfront Minnesota has a toolkit. So I think the other important thing with this is even if a parent is scrolling through our policies, concerned about whether our school is a good fit for their child. As you read this, for a family that is going through this, having that, just having some reference points. And in the state of Minnesota, we have so much here. Like our MDE is just, we're just so lucky. So, to have these references in the policy, not just for the students, but for families to kind of pull up and get some guidance is,
That packet you're referring to was given to every board member and is at the bottom of the policy.
and I actually think that was done in 2017, and after looking at some of these policies, I wonder if Minnesota's going to do a revamp, which would be very, very exciting. So this will be a policy, again, that we just need to come back to and make sure that we are staying on top of best practices, staying on top of the research, making sure that we are advancing any changes that might happen in Title IX. It's very exciting.
Couple of thoughts. So this topic, as was the 102.1, extremely important. We need to do it right. I guess that's one of the things I struggle with when we talk emergencies, because I feel like it's hard to do something right and do it fast. We're going through typos, we're going through, some things are just word change here or there, that's not what I'm talking about, but I want to make sure we do it right for the students. And we have a way to develop policies. We have a first read, public comment, second read, public comment. Emergencies, in my opinion, is like an emergency meeting. We need to have a pandemic, we need to have a terrorist attack, we need to have an emergency. So I think at the governance meeting we discussed, is there a student that we know of, or staff, or anyone, that's not currently covered by our policies that is struggling? And we couldn't think of one, but that's just, there's a small set of folks. Because I could be convinced, this is an emergency if we had one student, staff, whatever, that's struggling. And we couldn't. So now I'm feeling like, I like the idea, let's address this issue as a board and as adults, sorry, we're all basically adults here. So as a board, students, and the board, and we sit together and we talk through difficult issues, we need to do that. But I feel we need to do it right. We need to do first read, second read, have the public comment, make it better. Don't do it fast. So I would love and would support an approval of a first read tonight. I struggle personally with an emergent approval because I feel like we don't need to be pushing things through. I love the meaning of it. I believe the meaning, and I support the meaning, which is we support our students. I like that. And if it's in, now we're saying February, or if it's in March, I feel like we're still supporting the students. I get the fact that from a student's perspective, it seems like we're slow, but we're trying to be deliberate. Those are both important. That slow is not important, but being deliberate is important. So I support the first read. I would make a motion and to approve a first read. I would struggle with an emergency. But I think we differ, and I'm okay with the fact that we differ on how to implement it, not whether we should implement it.
Can I say more?
Yeah, please, have the discussion. Yeah.
Sometimes when a harm happens to such a marginalized diversity group, you just can't undo it, ever, in that lifetime. It's just done. And sometimes it's just better, especially because we're never going to know that out front Minnesota, these kids cannot be out front unless we have secured every inch of this campus as a safe place for them. Because the emotional, potentially physical harm is just too risky for them. So in my mind, we have to pass this emergently to provide that security, to mandate and require that our administration implement these advances, work with these students so that they feel that they have some place to go with their schools. I will not forget what Alex said. He thanked our admin for helping him find a place to go to the bathroom. A basic human function.
Thank you, Adam. Duke, is there, one of the things I want to be more intentional about is hearing the other side. So is there anyone else that would offer up a counterpoint before we say more of the for the immersion? No? DJ, where you
Yeah, I wanted to add something. I don't think it's really a counterpoint, though. And
Go ahead. If there's no more counterpoints, then we'll entertain a forepoint.
Okay. Working with students that are confronted with this, having a trans son myself, I know the pain that the students have experienced. And so I really respect your notion that this is an emergent need to move it forward and show that we have all students' backs. So I appreciate that. And I also really understand the idea of wanting to do it the right way too. So I really appreciate your comments as well, Dan, on making sure. I kind of lean though in this particular case that it has been something that kids have struggled with. And our kids here at this school that have struggled to find place and to find voice. And I think there's something to be said with sharing and acknowledging that and saying that this is a need that needs to be addressed and maybe it's been overlooked or it hasn't been addressed fast enough. And it's not as if we're not getting the exact wording correctly, as we'll have a second reading. So if there are any commas that need to be changed, those can be adjusted. But I think it's a statement. So in that regard, I kind of lean towards the idea that it is something that needs to happen as a statement to the people that this most impacts, to say that we've got their back.
Thank you.
Well, and you were saying at the governance committee, you were looking for one person who this would affect. Well, Alex came and talked about how this would affect Alex. So to me, that answers that question.
Yeah, and I didn't have that at the governance meeting, right? I mean,
Yep.
we were looking for it because, sorry, this is the counterpoint again, but I was looking for the emergency. Where's the emergency? Help me, because I can vote emergency. We did pandemic, we did all sorts of fun and exciting things here as a board. I can do it, I just need to be convinced it needs to be done. But I will say, I'm trying to practice hearing, right? And I'm hearing some point that seemed to kind of move me a little bit into that space where I can help support it. And I can help, look, I support the issue. I want to be clear. Let's not be mincing words. Support the issue. It's the question of do we do it emergently or do we do it first read, second read? I can support an emergent passing with the understanding that we will come back and we'll clean up the thing. And I would encourage the public to provide some feedback at the next meeting as well, because I feel that that's our responsibility and that's the way we set things up, is that we allow public comments for any new policy twice. We should still do that. Maybe some people didn't realize 102.2 was going to be discussed or didn't read through, so they didn't, so I think those people should have a chance to provide feedback. So, yeah, any further discussion? Otherwise,
Point to clarity.
points. Yeah.
Point of clarity. Emergent passing just ensures that that policy isn't in effect tonight. There's still a second reading, correct? There's still time to adapt and revise and meet those needs that you feel still should be there.
Right, yeah, and one thing with an emergency, what we're saying is it's so important it goes to the website tomorrow. It doesn't wait until March. So as it is, as it's passed, as this version reads, right now we have one error of the 102.1, just cleaned it to 2. So I would make a motion that we emergently pass it with the .2. Is there anything else?
And I think one thing, I remember when we were talking, just to be totally transparent, it's also, when we try to identify if there is a student struggling with this, we all are so confidentiality heightened that those are, I wish it didn't have to be like that. I wish everybody could just be themselves. But so those questions were kind of, it's hard.
Maybe it couldn't have been answered, right, the question that I asked.
Yeah,
That's fair.
in the way that it needed to be
Yep.
answered to determine whether it's emergent. So I think we just have to think about it a little differently.
I'd like to put it to a vote unless there's new points of order. Ed, are you okay with that?
Yes, please.
Are you okay with the motion to amend to 102.2?
Yeah.
Is the only change? Yeah.
Mhm.
So emergent from Heddle with 102.2 correction. Are you okay to second that? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, so passes 6-0, emergently with the correction. All right, are you guys okay? We have one more. So 102, so we had the motion that was made yesterday, right before we recessed. I don't have it exact, but it was a removal of board member. I don't know, DJ, do you have it, how we phrased it? It's somewhere along those lines.
Oh, let me go back up and see if it's worded.
I'm calling it item J. That's what we have.
Well, we had a motion for discussion. Motion to discuss, I think is how it was worded. And then a motion to move Mr. Eng from the board, to remove.
Okay. So if I recall, Wendell, you put forward the motion, and Heddle, I believe you seconded, is that correct?
I did.
So the motion on the table right now for discussion is removal of board member Eng, is that right?
That is correct.
So my understanding in discussion with the lawyer that was brought forward when we had a quorum yesterday, we put to recess. I made the mistake of taking that one first, I should have been putting it at the end of the agenda, so now that's where we're at. For discussion on that topic. I know we did some discussion yesterday. Is any further discussion? Difficult subject, but if I could, I'd just like to go around the room. Sorry, DJ, you're up first.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Easy one. I can start from the right.
That's okay. It was a hard board meeting yesterday. But I also think the concerns and issues brought forward in this particular motion are serious, or were serious, and are serious. And in order for us to function for the best interest of our community, of our school, and certainly of our students, some of the points that were raised were very concerning. And so I thought it was in our right to have that discussion and to move forward, so.
Anything else?
I'd just like to reiterate that the motion was made with fact, it was driven by fact, driven by evidence, standards.
Lisa,
Yeah. So thinking about our discussion at the beginning and thinking about the problem rather than the person, I do want to go back and point out that as a parent at MSA, having been a parent first and then a teacher, I do want to commend this board member on his presence at many, many MSA functions, games, concerts, things like that. I do want to recognize his contribution to the school in that way, and his service as a board member.
I'll go next, just in fairness of doing the order, if you guys are okay with it, but we need to have the discussion. I think that's not a question. If we have concerns of any one of us not following our duty, that discussion needs to be had. My only issue was the way it came about. I feel that we did not do fair by this board member or by ourselves. So I would just kindly ask that if we do have issues with board members in the future, reach out to our authorizer if you're not comfortable talking to me as board chair or whoever the board chair is in the future. Because I feel like I was robbed of the chance to have the counterpoint. I feel like we discussed some concerns and some allegations, which may be true, may not be true, I don't know. But I don't get a chance to have that in my mind to make a decision. And as such, I feel like I have to abstain. So I apologize because I know my role here is to vote for or against on an issue. I don't have the other half to decide. So I feel like we have a procedure on how we handle complaints, and that's not it. And I feel like we let our community down in this case. We hijacked the board meeting. And my fault for putting it first, we couldn't operate as a board. So we have procedures in place because probably somebody did something like this before. And now we have procedures. So please try your best to follow the procedures and policies that we have in place. And I'm not saying I know the answer to either for or against. If fiduciary, trust was broken, we can't have that. That's not a discussion, right? I mean, it's done. It's an email or a discussion, you are off. So I think we have an opportunity to clean up our bylaws a little bit because we're silent on how we remove board members. That's something that we can fix in the future, and we already have some ideas on how we can make them more clear. So that's my 2 cents. I feel like for the individuals involved with allegations coming up the way that they did, they don't have a chance to respond. First, they feel they're feeling attacked, which I would also feel attacked, and there's no proper way for them to respond, except for what I would probably do also is leave, right, if I'm feeling attacked and unprepared. So we have an agenda, we have an agenda setting process, add it in there, discussion of board member, fill in the blank. And at least that person is notified that they need to come prepared to be able to discuss. So, that's my 2 cents. I spoke for a long time, but I feel a little bit passionate about this one because it is so important. We have a board member, and I don't mean to cause appointed versus elected, but they were elected by our community, right? I mean, so we have a board member that came in with votes of people saying, that's the person I want to help represent me at this level. I take it very serious for us to say, I hear something bad, you're out. I don't subscribe to that idea. So if there is something bad, prove it, or I want to have that person talk to me and say, I did it, and I'm guilty, and then we move on. But that's where I'm at, so please.
And I hear what you're saying, but I also, my fiduciary responsibility are these kids, and I hear them, and I also feel that that's important. And that I agree. I think that's why we're here. I guess I just feel like that was in jeopardy to me.
But we talked about yesterday,
Yeah.
we don't assume intent, right?
No.
And I'm not assuming intent by you guys, so please don't make me come across as passing judgment. You get to vote the way you feel, right? So please do.
So as a parent who watched from the outside, so glad you said that, Mrs. Ward. And then being a quiet parent who now sits here, who came for equity, nothing else, just equity. I feel like, and I too hear what you're saying, Dan, that Jeff deserves a chance to respond, right? A chance to explain his perspective and where he's coming from. And this is why I really don't like the inbox. Because as a new member, I feel like I am certain that every time I was uncertain or I was struggling, I did reach out and I did trust that you were doing your job as chair, as our procedure is set, to then reach out to that person, to, if it was Jeff and to kind of inquire about that, rehabilitate that, or whatever was necessary. And I know for a fact that I have done that consistently. I don't harbor anything if I see something wrong happen. I do speak out. My only way to speak out was to send it to somebody, to you, or to bring it up at the governance table. So as I reflect on the counts, I'm pretty confident. I know in my conscience that I did bring it forward the best and only way I knew, because we don't talk about these things here at the table. We send them to you or discuss them briefly at governance, and nobody else is there but just a few of us. So I feel like Jeff did get a chance to respond to any equity concerns I had, not openly, unfortunately, not here. Same thing with this last, and I think the final breach of confidentiality in terms of the email. If he had a chance to respond to that, if that was, isn't that his chance to respond? And then yesterday when we made a motion to discuss, couldn't he have stayed and discussed? And I mean, I know that that's the hard thing about an open forum boardroom. It's just so hard to find your words, but so did we really take away the opportunity to respond and defend yourself? I mean, was it really such a surprise?
I can't speak on behalf of Chair, but I can say for me, it's the first time I had an 8-point, I was quickly scrambling list, right? So I didn't have that before. I had the email from Friday, but I trust as the board chair, somebody sent out an email that maybe they shouldn't have, so I immediately replied back to them, this is not to be sent out and copied Randy. In my opinion as board chair, you could say it's wrong. If an item came up, I would try to address it immediately with the individual. Last month, we had people who maybe spoke out of turn or had followed up with each and every individual afterwards. I didn't consider that reason to kick somebody off the board. So I think a point was made, which was, now we have 8. Okay, so if you look in totality, you could start to say, I'm seeing a pattern, and I would agree with that. All I'm saying is it would have been nice if I was given that 8 offline by whoever was concerned, and as board chair, I could go through, or if you don't trust that I'm capable or competent, then please go to either another board member or to our authorizer. That's all I'm asking. So I think for Jeff's, if I hadn't seen it, I would be surprised if Jeff had the awareness that 8 critiques would be leveled against him during the board meeting, and maybe not fair to ask him to respond on that point. But if it was put on the agenda, he might have been able to ask, what is this topic as we form our agenda? Somebody's concerned about X, Y, and Z, then come prepared to discuss. Then I think that's fine and fair. Even giving him the weekend would have been better than the day I'll make a motion of one of our fellow board members. That's how I see it, but we can differ. Again, I'm okay if we don't see it the same way. But if, and I think I need to be clear, if somebody breaks their fiduciary responsibilities, well, then they need to step down, or we need to vote them out. I'm not supporting bad behavior. If we have bad behavior, that needs to be addressed. I'm just asking, can we address that in a different manner than we did last time, next time? Let's say we have it next time, hopefully not. That's it. So I guess any further points, otherwise I don't want to belabor it, it's already uncomfortable for those. But it is an important topic, but I think we've all had a chance to share. Anything, any additional or amendments you want to make, or you'd like to have the vote of the motion you passed? Made?
I motion for the dismissal of Jeff Ing for cause.
Seconded.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I will abstain. 5 to 0 to 1 abstention for Alex.
Point of clarification. What are we calling this one? Is this J?
Yeah, I'm calling it J on mine, but you have the official one now, so officially it's J. Okay, that's the last that I had on our amended agenda. Okay. Thanks for the discussion. I know it was difficult. So next up, we have future board items for March. How are we doing, Edel, on bylaw revision? Do we think we'll have something?
Emma is taking out the outtakes
Okay.
right now. And probably have some key discussion points after tonight.
Would it make sense to focus? I know we've done so many policy things. Would it make sense to focus and get that bylaw going? Just an idea. The governance committee can think about it, but
Yeah,
just to make sure we can have something to react
couple
to.
revisions
Yeah.
and just.
Yeah.
Can I add to March, the 2023-24 school calendar for March?
Yep. Wait for our calendar. Then we have, hopefully the DEI board training. Cross your fingers that March 14, 16, somewhere around there. April, we don't have anything yet. So, plus or minus, where you guys at? Second, extended meeting? I don't know what you want to call it. Overtime?
Yeah, overtime, there you go.
I'm glad we clarified what a farm is. I think that was good, just for everyone to be aware of what that means.
I appreciate the vulnerability, if I can speak.
Anything in particular, just on the different topics?
Across the board.
Others?
Quick rehash, we passed 6-0 on the emergent.
Okay.
Is that correct?
5. Oh, emergent.
On the emergent, 102.2, did you vote?
I
in
did,
the
and
affirmative?
I will say I changed my mind.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Please allow me to do so.
No, fantastic, I just wanted to make sure I captured it correctly.
So, I did change my mind. I will say I had to come in with an open mind and I changed it. We covered a lot of difficult topics if you look at the spectrum we did tonight, and I just want to applaud you guys for kind of keeping your cool and having a discussion and taking turns, so thank you for that. I've never once needed to use the gavel, as far as, so just having it out here was sufficient enough.
It scared us.
I'd like to give a big shout out to Noah and the Black Student Union, as well as Alex from the GSA.
Yes.
I think that it is honorable what you are all doing.
To Ms. Metcalf, to their advisors, to Ms. Brooks, it's just,
Do we need to put something about, it's really quick turnaround for the March meeting, but like an election committee meeting, I don't know. If we, I don't know if we can.
Before spring break, or what?
Oh, there's no way I can get it in this week.
We have that work day on the 13th.
That's true. I'll see what, I will attempt to hold an election committee meeting prior to the next board meeting.
Yep.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Monday after spring break is work day.
All right, I'm going
I,
to make a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask one question before that? Since this is the end of the month, today is the last day, and we have needing to get things to authorizers. When is that? You're going to tell me tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yes. It's always the end of the month.
But do
Okay.
you need the notes to reflect the passage?
Just the minutes. We have
I need to
submit-
get the
Emma
minutes to the
submits the
authorizer
minutes
by the
to
first of the
Sam.
month, so I will need to turn those around. Since I am taking notes as diligently as I can in this particular case, is there a way of having somebody else review just so that I'm feeling?
I mean, I can try to help, but also, is it okay just to call it draft? Because it's not approved
Sure.
until next month, so.
Sure.
You can send them to, as you have them to
Just
Emma.
say-
I will finish up, I was working
That's
on
fine.
yesterday, so that's all set, and I just
Okay.
feel pretty good about where I'm at, but I it'll be a draft, so
Put it
I will
back
take
up.
exceptions, I will take no exceptions for changes at our next.
Hopefully, we'll all read it for next month and we'll catch anything that was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your help in stepping up. Okay. 8:07, motion to adjourn, second anyone?
Second.
Second by DJ, all those in favor? Aye. Say aye. Thank you. Thanks everyone watching at home.
And,
Okay.